Hey there, welcome to the Ryan Kingsline Show. My name's Ryan Kingsline, and in this podcast, we interview amazing artists, creatives, and creators to find out how they tick and how they got where they are today. So sit back, relax. I look forward to sharing their journey with you. Okay, all right. Welcome, guys. Thank you for being here and for going through the little bit of the delay there. I have Guillaume with me, and Guillaume, you were with Keos Masons, right?
That's right.
Awesome. So there's a lot of stuff I want to talk about, because you got a lot of beautiful work, stylized work with the Fortnite. You've done some tutorials, Shardbound. And Shardbound, I've seen a lot of really cool artists' work come out of that. And it was a real kind of interesting project. So I'm going to want to know all about that. But first, tell me a little bit about what you do, just so people understand, because you're a character artist and art manager.
Yeah. So an art manager / character artist. So my job is to build a rapport and a relationship with a client. We have many, many clients. And I also lead a team. So I have to teach and nurture new talent to make in true production. So to help them out through commercial aspect. And also you have to understand the art direction and the needs of the client. It's pretty challenging to move back and forth through realism and stylized. And something stressful is I have to make sure that nobody's blocked in the team. Everybody has something to do. Everybody understands what to do. And transferring data when at the end of when a character is approved, I have to move away the ZBrush, the substance files. Also, like things you don't usually think about is baking files, so that if the client ever decides to change anything, they have it a real easy access to it.
Got it. Yeah, because substance doesn't store that right in it, right?
Yeah, that's right.
All right.
Yeah.
And Keos Masons does a lot, right? You said realism, stylized. So tell me a little bit about Keos. Like, this is kind of a small company, large company. You guys doing freelance work? How's this work?
Yeah, we're French people, so we thought it would be pronounced chaos, but we realized after it's actually pronounced Keos, so we're dealing with this right now.
So should I call it Keos Masons?
Please do.
Okay, I will.
So it was founded by two of my friends, Cédric Seo and Marco Plouffe, who are some of the best people in the industry. They're incredibly fast and talented. And they decided to open to be handling outsourcing by ourselves and be closer to the client. So yeah, we have a lot of clients. You can go on the website so we can look at it together. There you go. There's an incredible amount of work for multiple companies.
So you guys are, larger than 10, larger than 20 artists all working on projects?
Yeah, we're a lot. I can tell you my responsibility is Epic and a little game called Fortnite.
A little game.
I don't know if you've heard about it.
Just about every kid in the neighborhood I tell the parents I work in games, and they're like, "Oh, you know Fortnite?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
That's right. If I cross like a couple of kids on the street, 90% chance they're actually talking about Fortnite. So that's completely amazing.
Yeah, that is. It's done so much, And so, are you guys actually developing full characters for that? I see props, I see a bunch of stuff in here. So, what else are you doing for Fortnite?
We're doing skins. So
skins.
Yeah, we usually don't do faces. You see, you can see all the skins we do on Keos Mason, the one we can show right now. But the ones I show on my portfolio are the ones I contributed for. I mean, personally, like ZBrush wise, but I art manage most of them. So yeah, my responsibility is also to review work. So that's what's cool with our company is before the client sees it, usually I'll look at it and make sure it's up to standards. So there's like 2 levels of approval before it gets to the client.
What are those standards? Because there's a couple of ways that we could approach this topic, and I'm glad you kind of brought that up. One of them is, I'll tell it this way. So one of my neighbors runs a game studio in town, and he was talking about how his artists will work to in his words, they work to portfolio, which is they try to make it look as awesome as possible, and they'll spend. And he was kind of upset, not upset. He was just talking about how an artist would spend an entire day on the shoes and getting shoelaces in a shooter where you're
Yeah.
never going to be looking at the feet, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's a waste of his dollars, the company dollars, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he wanted to get artists to work to what he called to work to project, right? But a lot of us here are trying to get jobs, and a big part of people I deal with is people trying to get jobs. So how far do we take stuff? And at what point are we taking it sideways and it's becoming a little narcissistic about our talent? And at what point are we giving the information to recruiting people that we're actually working to project? We can do it within a timely way, but still make it awesome. Do you understand where I'm going with that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So that's like the dilemma. So what are the standards that help you know that's been met and somebody hasn't gone overboard?
But it's interesting. So you're talking about a rule where 80% of the result is 20% of the work. I don't know if you know about this rule.
Totally. Yeah. 80-20, totally.
Yeah. So it's good to know as a personal artist that, imagine somebody's painting a giant painting. He'll block out the sky and in a couple of hours, he'll have a scene, and then he'll spend days and days on the little grass and the windows and the little people. But your question is, sometimes you don't have a choice. Sometimes the art director is the one who will decide if you spend all the time on shoelaces.
Yeah.
But me personally, when we're looking at a Fortnite character, like what you're looking at right now, I work on the big picture. I'm making sure that we usually zoom out and that this detail is readable from afar. Is it vibrant? Is it clean? Is there silhouette breaks? Is there material difference all over your model? And that's all I can do. After that, if the client wants to pixel fuck it, sorry the term, but it's his choice. But those rules you have to know to get results in a timely manner. That's where you have to focus. Big picture. At the same time, what you're saying is, in Fortnite, if you look at we're looking at the Fortnite Spider Knight right now, the complete right one, the profile from the back, that's usually where the camera is for the game. So you have to make sure that it reads well from the right shoulder angle.
Yeah. So know the character, basically, so you understand what you need to focus on.
That's right.
Look at it from a distance, and so you make sure that there is material separations, right? Multiple materials.
Yeah.
Make sure that it reads well in terms of the value. I think gradients are a really big part of this conversation, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. And then what about, let's say, for example, if we just look at the shin guards on this guy, how do you know how far to take something like that? Because you've got, there's detail in it, but it's relatively simple. You don't have engraving, you don't have extra detail in there. How, is this concept that's just being given to you, or do you have some leeway that tells you yes or no?
Yeah, usually the concept is king. You try to follow the design as close as possible, show the client, and then we go from there. If it's not working visually or sometimes rigging wise, there's some parts that won't deform well. So we'll have to tweak the design to maybe leave more rest for the pivots, like the wrist or the ankles, for them to deform.
Yeah. Got it. And then how far do you take the ZBrush sculpt now? Because I feel like this is one of the things that's moving and changing a bit, and obviously less so for character, infinitely more so for environment. Yeah. But how far do you take the ZBrush or the digital sculpt versus what you do in Substance or just texturing?
Usually in our technique, we try to put as much in the ZBrush as possible. But I see more and more the Substance is pretty crazy about adding fine details. But yes, so primary shape, secondary shape in the ZBrush, but then like tertiary or even the fourth level of details, which would I say pores or fabrics, this is added in Substance.
Got it. But the stitching you do, even though technically stitchings can be done in Substance, it's usually, what I tell my students is, it's just sexy in the ZBrush.
It is sexy. That's a good word.
Yeah. So you might as well, especially for your portfolio.
And also you'll extract an occlusion and a cavity and all sorts of depth that if you're really good at hand painting, maybe you can do it, but I prefer to sculpt it by hand.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys are doing character and props?
That's right.
Great.
But
And
I have to give big props. Like I put everybody's name for the Fortnite assets.
Yeah.
Because it's a team effort. So,
there was a controversy just a little while ago, actually, where an artist kind of posted, they were just kind of like, hey, I'm going to post my artwork up. And it was really beautiful.
yeah.
So I think it was an environment. And somebody got on there and like, you didn't make that. The 20 other guys made that with you. And it was a big, huge blow up,
Yeah.
But it's a problem now because there's so many people that work. And sometimes you don't even know who worked on it, especially if you're an outsourcer and you're not in that team. So how important is that to be crediting and doing all of that? Or how do we deal with it now?
It's a good question. I mean, I do my best to ask the other artists, but I might forget somebody. But the big point of this is it's hard for an employer to gauge your level as an artist. So I think personal work is key for those kind of things. Like show your professional work for sure, but you have to make sure that you can show your level of something you did from scratch.
That makes sense. I remember a friend of mine, Melissa Altabello, she was at Naughty Dog for 10 years. And she was telling me she moved to Sucker Punch and she had to do 2 art tests.
Wow.
Yeah. And I tell people this story because people are, sometimes you'll see online, people will say, this is the only industry that, you have to work so hard to get a job. You got to take art tests. And I'm like, yeah, yeah,
That's right.
But you can go be a programmer. I mean, you can do that if you want. But that's good to hear. I mean, and is personal work something? It is obviously something you stay up on quite a bit too.
It's my oxygen. It's my bread and butter. I'm working on something new. I mean, I think you're the same. Like we're very driven by all of this, by just improving and getting better. And the industry has been so good and patient with me and my peers. So I try to also teach through my personal projects now.
That's great. And what kind of feedback are you getting from that? Because one of the things that's kind of key to my career, I guess, if you could call what I do a career.
Yeah.
I've always given back, and that's built up so much of a connection with community, and it's kind of key to who I am. I have to do that. But it's been, I think, one of the things that's really helped me. And so I'm looking, like let's say if we were to take a look at that, the Marvelous Designer breakdown you do for the Jedi.
That's right.
We're looking at that, and I'm looking at this 2,230 likes. How impactful has it been for you to be producing these breakdowns and sharing like this?
You mean impactful to other people?
Well, I mean, yes. I guess what we should do, because I was actually a little bit motivated in the self-interest, because I'm trying to get my students to do this, and I want to make sure that they see the benefit. So, yeah, how impactful to other people, but really, how impactful to you?
It's funny. So I'll be honest. One of the reasons why I started putting tutorials on is when you publish something on ArtStation, there's a little thing in the corner saying, did you know that you get 30% more likes if you have breakdowns of everything? And that's exactly where I got the idea.
Yeah.
But since then, like just, teaching is the best learning, really. The fact that when I start a project, I'm planning on teaching an aspect of it. It makes me learn at the same time, and it makes me reflect on my own technique and how I should approach things. So, of course, it gives me a lot.
Yeah, that's great. So along those lines, has it helped in any specific way in terms of careers or job offers or different things?
No, not really. Actually, I've never heard of anybody benefiting from my tutorial, but I'm sure it does. I'm sure it influenced some people at some point.
Cool.
Must have been, right? Like, we never know. Like, Ryan, you've been helping me through my entire career and you don't even know about it. And I have examples like we can talk about later, but you had a great impact on my life.
Oh, man. Sure. That's awesome. Yeah, it's so true because you don't know who you're helping. And then I'll meet somebody and have a conversation just like this. And they'll be like, yeah, I learned ZBrush from you. And I'm like, oh, man,
that's right.
Shit, I haven't taught ZBrush in so long. That's so cool. If we're looking at this texture breakdown, texture is something that I think is really, it's kind of one of those done things for a lot of people getting into this industry. It's like everybody gets in and they're like, I'm a sculptor. And nowhere is the word texture with sculptor. How important is it for people to master texturing and to do that?
It's really important. So I can talk about a life lesson.
Yeah.
I moved to California in 2015 to work in Palo Alto in a little company that doesn't exist anymore called Artillery, where we were going to make the next MOBA and become billionaires. But it didn't work out, obviously. And I have to say, when I left there, I had strong sculpting skills, or medium to strong. Anyway, that was what I knew how to do. And I faced a wall when I got there because I've heard a lot about color team and composition and texturing and even end painting. And I did not know how to do any of this. And it was a great learning tool. So one of the reasons why I did the project we're looking at, the Flying Pig, is to break down a bit. Because if you scroll down a bit, I'm honest with it. At first, I say I was completely, if you go down a bit, break down, I was overwhelmed for a long time about texturing. But like you remember, texturing used to be a pain in the ass. But now that Substance Painter came in, it's like I had to wait for the tools to grow for me to really focus on it. Because do you remember we used to, when we were painting texture, we had the Photoshop, paint on Photoshop, save it, and then see what happens in 3D, and then back and forth and back and forth. And you couldn't see your metalness. You had to render things. Even like fixing a seam was really, really hard. So now the tools are here, and I just wanted to share how I break down my thing, because even now texturing can be completely overwhelming. So I broke down everything by value, color, gradient, material, wear, and now you have to make sure that you follow those steps, or any steps you think are right, or you're going to end up like completely lost and just change values and not sure where you're going with it.
Yeah, that's great. And one of the things, because color can be incredibly overwhelming. So one of the things that I think is great about this Flying Pig is you have color, but you broke it down into color, gradient, detail painting, and then material, which is really getting you that specular reflective value, as you say, right? And so it's really those three things that are painting, so to speak, or color, texture. Talk to me about the gradient, because this is something that I see come up, especially if you're working in stylized. It's a little bit more obvious, but it's relevant across the board. But the gradient is the thing I think people miss. They're just thinking flat color, and then they're thinking cloudy noise. What does it mean, gradient?
Well, I'd like to know your opinion about it. It's not clear actually. Gradient to me is something very pleasing. It draws the eye to the face or to the upper part of your character. You don't see this in real life, but it gets me at the core. I think it's because like when you look at somebody, you focus on the face and the rest is a bit blurry. So if you darken those areas, it makes you focus more on the important aspects. I think also I read somewhere in the Dota art that usually if you have little breakups of materials, that's okay. You don't have to use gradient. But for bigger parts that are zones of rest, it's nice to have a breakup, which is a gradient, if it makes sense to you. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. And it's interesting because it's not PBR.
Yeah, you're right. I'm not trying to recreate materials perfectly. I'm trying to represent the feel of it. So, I broke down my things by gold, leather, plastic, and then I play with those aspects. I want it to be understandable as a material, but I don't want to be like linked by a real texture of leather because it might be too busy. So I balance my things overall. So you're right. It's not PBR, and I didn't want it to be PBR. I think, we're trying to get the best of both worlds right now. Sometimes I have a problem with like commercial movies or anything where they make something super stylized and then they try to have super realistic textures on top of it. And it doesn't always work.
In this particular one, if we're looking at this image, the flying pigs, I like that idea that you say you're just focused on material. And I know that one of the things that can be really problematic for people, especially because, the characters and the scene that you're working with is There's a lot of stuff to do. So you'd have potentially a lot to texture
That's
and to
right.
work. But we use a term in the bootcamp where we focus, instead of realism, we're just focused on material expression. We just want it to
Mm-hmm.
express
Mm-hmm.
leatherness. We're not looking for
Mm-hmm.
realism.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that has to do with that games just don't have they don't have either the hardware or really the need at this point for realism. There's no ray casting that, has to be dealt with, any of that stuff.
Yeah.
It's all just, some approximation of it. So what is it that really sells a texture for you? If you're looking at somebody's portfolio, what helps you see that they know what the hell they're talking about and they're not just, throwing on some ZBrush poly paint?
It's funny, Ryan, because I wanted to come back. If you go back to the tutorial, you started with color, but I think the most important thing is value. And
Yeah.
still now, it's like I'll repeat myself over and over again. The first thing I did was to put value on my character and make
Mm,
sure that there's a nice range of black to white and a nice like value in between, and make sure that the pure you try to stay away from pure black or pure white. But if you have to put some, you put them in very small places and draw the attention. And you have to remember to always keep mind of this. I'll usually, if I use substance, I'll put a layer on top of everything in grayscale. So
mhm.
I'll always be able to go back to this. So I think I'm not the most qualified to talk about like realistic materials and make them sing. But to me, it's those basic rules that I'll try to follow till the end. And hopefully I'll be able to push other aspects of my artwork soon.
Mm.
Yeah.
When you're looking at people and evaluating whether or not they're, job candidates, let's say,
Hmm.
how much are you looking at their technical preparation, their topology, all of that stuff?
It's funny. I'll preface with saying I'm not hiring people. That's not usually what I do. So I
Hmm.
can tell you just what I like about people's work in general.
Yeah.
I it's and like judging an artist is really hard, and their work is maybe 40 to 60% of why you hire somebody. Really,
Right.
if that means anything, it's just attitude and how they're gonna learn. But I can say that if I look at somebody's work and I think they're not ready yet, it's usually a question of them going into too small details before the big shapes are done.
Mm,
That's the first step that an artist has to still work before they can join the industry. Really.
that makes a lot of sense. So
Yeah.
making sure that the way they're thinking about it,
Hmm.
is something that you can train, as opposed to
Yeah.
somebody who's like, okay, now I don't even have a cheekbone, but I'm sculpting the wrinkles under the eye.
Yeah. You went through this. We all made that mistake.
Yeah.
It's very like rewarding to do details, but you have to just snap out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. All right. So you don't necessarily hire, but you do train artists,
That's right.
and you kind of manage like a lead artist, so to speak,
Yeah.
managing them to help them grow and things like that.
Yeah.
What do you recommend for people when you see that they're not fully up to date on texturing? What do you recommend? How do you onboard them to
Yeah.
increase their skill?
Well, the human race has been looking for those kind of troubles for forever. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of people way smarter than us that ask themselves those questions and had a lifetime to learn from their mistake. So there's a lot of books out there, and 3D is a young medium, but painting and drawing and sculpting it's the same. It's the same aspects. It's the same problem solving. So we can talk later about some of the documentation I think people should read or
Hmm.
what they can work on. I think
Right.
something that helped me a lot with my observation and anatomy and simplification is years and years of figure drawing. Like
Yes.
that kicks your ass. Like when you have and like it usually starts with a minute pose and 5 minutes and 30 minutes. And when you're doing like 31-minute pose, you you realize slowly that observation has to be worked a lot. That we're all
Mm.
very lazy, and then you get that like visual grid in your mind that is the eye aligning with the knee? Is the knee aligning with the, you just calculate every time. You become a little computer.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah.
And that is just something that I think from years of figure drawing, I don't think you can overestimate the importance of that.
Mhm.
Just trying to work fast, not fast and sloppy, but fast but productive.
Yeah.
And that's a question that I come to frequently with the CG side of this too, is because there's so many pieces of software. You
Mhm.
can go so deep. I mean, Marvelous Designer, one of my students actually went off and he works in the fashion industry. So he came in for a character artist boot camp and he really excelled in Marvelous Designer. And that was one of the things that was really, and, he had a roommate or a friend that was working at a Sprint or somewhere like that and ended up getting a job. And now he kind of leads a lot of their digital efforts. And it's a totally different job than character, right?
Mhm.
And so, we were on the forum because we have our own community and everybody was asking like, hey, do you know how to make patterns? And he was like, I'm not a pattern maker. And I'm looking at him like, these are pretty fucking amazing patterns. What the hell do you mean you're not a pattern maker, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I mean, I'm not a pattern maker. Like there's actually scientists that make patterns out of Clio, which is the other version of Marvelous Designer. And, they're hardcore, this
Oh,
much millimeters, this particular curve, and it's going to cause the fabric to billow out. And you can go deep in
oh
all of
yeah.
these.
It's incredible. Marvelous is magic, really. Yeah.
Yeah. And all of these programs, because I mean, even with Substance. So my students could be like, okay, I'm going to learn Substance Painter. And then they're like, well, I don't really have a wood that I like. Let me go into Substance Designer. Now I'm going to make wood from scratch. And now I'm going to make like old wood and I'm going to make
Yeah.
oak and then I'm going to make teak. And how deep
Mhm.
do you have to go or how do you modulate this?
Well, it's one of the questions I've heard you ask other people in your question, like what advice would you give an artist? And I think if you incline to it, I think pushing those kinds of skills other than just be a great sculptors, which are many of, into substance designer
Mm-hmm.
or you said marvelous designer or even low polys. Yeah, I've heard you say that many times. Like those tools are great and they'll open doors for you for sure.
That's great. Yeah, I got into a bit of trouble. I think Pixelogic stopped talking to me for a little bit
Oh
for
no.
for a video where, arguably I was a little aggressive. I said, "Is ZBrush dead?"
Oh no.
So that was probably could have been rephrased. But the question is, everybody stays focused in ZBrush, and I see it
Yeah.
so often with my students that it's like such a small part of the process for a lot of the industry.
Yeah. So if you go back to my female Jedi,
Yep.
I love Marvelous, but I feel like it's like trying to catch water. Like if you try to catch water,
Mm,
I'll go through you. Sometimes I'm just trying to get exactly what I want, and it doesn't work. And at some point, I give up and I sculpt. You see, there's a lot of sculpting in there, and that's just the way I am. Like a pattern is really hard to do. Like a jeans pocket. If you missed your chance, you can't just push a part of your pattern. Everything has to be like realigned and recut. So I think Marvelous is a specialty. I think if you want to go into this, you can go deep. But a bit like you were saying about anatomy, I think it's also a crux. Like at some point, knowing too much, you'll forget about other things. Like it's also nice to be well rounded, if that
right.
makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think one of the things that is so powerful about programs like ZBrush, and I mean Blender's pretty powerful sculptor, but I don't think much compares to ZBrush. You can
Hmm.
just get in and brute force so
That's right.
much. And that actually is I think personally, like I spend a lot of time training my students on the techs and I want them to master Marvelous. And, one of my students, Milton Catagen, he did this samurai and he had the gi kind of pulled up with these straps. So he's got the gi pulling up and folding like mad and the strap
Hmm.
is full. And I mean, it took this
Hmm.
guy 3 weeks to figure that out.
Hmm.
Long ass time.
Hmm.
Results are beautiful.
Yeah.
But 3 weeks probably is not something you have in a production budget to figure out.
Well, yeah, no. Well, it might work if it's reused, but if I talk about my own experience, I can say that maybe 2 times a year. I'm all positive and I'm going to do a project and marvelous and it's going to be 100% marvelous and it's going to be amazing. And then I always end up the same way. I'm going to do a nice base and then I'm going to sculpt the rest because it's going to be faster and I'm going to have more control. But I think I'm confident that Marvel is going to get better and they'll find a way to have like default things that will be able to adjust and get the exact result you want.
Yeah, that makes sense. It was so new, but there's so much software that we have to learn and it's all getting so much better and there's so much time that it takes to learn these things. And what is it that artists need to focus on the most to specifically just help them get jobs?
Software wise?
Well, just in general. I mean, even if it's not software, because I think sometimes software is the problem.
Well, I can talk about like portfolio. What I think is presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Presentation takes you a long way and it's not done enough. Like, posing a character, like the importance of posing. And if you think of the amount of time it takes you to pose a character versus the time it took to model and texture it and low poly and everything, it's minimal. And it's going to take, you probably did the same thing. We can work on a character for 6 months and the client will say, and then you did a little contraposto, you put the head, the end on the hip, and then, it's amazing. Ship it. Like, it's really important.
That's funny. I actually remember Neville Page saying the exact same thing, because he'd started out sculpting just kind of not T, but A pose characters. And then you're working with directors, and I think at one point he had Steven Spielberg over his shoulder and it's like, they don't know how to interpret an A pose figure. They're just like, it looks okay. So he had to put life into it. And then once that happened, man, he's gangbuster. He was getting hired left, right, and center. Yeah.
I can also say, tell a story to your character or your environment. It's incredibly important. And if you see my personal projects, there's usually more than one character. And that's on purpose. It tells you a story, it tells you a relationship between two characters. If it's one character, usually it will end up be a like hero pose. And hero pose is cool, but personally it doesn't tell me much about what's happening.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Presentation, I think that's an interesting thing to kind of focus on because I've heard that multiple times. But then the question becomes, I think, how far do we take it? Is Contraposto okay? And I've had some students kind of struggle getting the Contraposto to even just kind of fit right. Do you have any kind of rules that you use for this? Because I see you've got quite a variety. You've got your Jedi who's in full action mode, almost collectible.
Yeah.
And then you got your soldier and your robot that are in a little bit more Contraposto.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I understand the struggle, but I can say, Ryan, I found another way you helped me recently. It's your mannequin that has your name on. I've actually used this recently. Like I looked at the concept I was doing and I felt it did not feel right. When I did the same pose, like she's kicking and I'm like, I would actually twist my body the other way to get some strength into it and then it'd be interesting in all angles. So I tested, first of all, I did the mannequin, the female 6 head or 8 heads. I don't remember.
8 head,
Yeah. I did because it's hero. Yeah. I did the one that was from the concept and then I saw that it didn't work. And then I did the way I thought it would be. Because usually if I see a pose, I'll act it out like a crazy person. And then I showed it to the concept artist and I said, I see it more this way. And he said like, yeah, you're right. Go for it. So I think a great way to test something out is not to jump into trying to pose your character right away, but to test it out first.
That's great. That's a great point. Thanks for reminding me. Because it's in there. It's in ZBrush. It's under Lightbox, and it's actually a project. So I go in and as soon as I'm done, I save them as ZTL so I can bring them in for posing.
Yeah.
But it's not too different than what Ofer created. Ofer created the humans. He just wasn't thinking artistic proportions.
Yeah.
That's cool. All right.
The dancers.
Yeah. And so these were done with the mannequins to work out the poses.
That's right.
That's really cool.
The interaction between both was hard. So yeah, I needed that.
And this is part of your personal work, right?
Yeah.
How does a day work for you where you actually have time for it? Like, how do you manage the schedule to help you be able to work on these things? And because I've been working a lot lately, and
Yeah.
that's hard. It's hard on the family sometimes.
Yeah. It's the $1,000,000 question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say, but you probably know the answer already. It's the lack of sleep is when
I think you're
everybody's asleep. You have maybe two precious hours for your own stuff.
That's true. Ain't that the truth? That's funny. It's like everybody says, how do you live a balanced life? How do you get it
Yeah.
together? And I'm like, number one, you throw balance out the window.
Yeah.
Overrated. If you
Yeah.
want to achieve something, you don't achieve it with balance. At least not in my experience. But that's cool to hear you say. I don't think people are always like, well, I do this and I have a routine. But really, at the end of the day, it's like you just work at night.
And you have your weekends, like when you can. You really have to love it. It's in my DNA, and I think it's in yours too. So it's like what we were meant to be.
But along those lines, in terms of this industry, there's some legitimate gripes, and I think some people talk about unionizing and things like that. And from my background, I'm not necessarily a fan of unions, but it's just because I haven't seen them work positively in like the retail and some of the places where I experienced it, which were really small.
Yeah.
So I don't know a ton about it, but this industry can be a little rough. And one of the things I tell my students is if the primary thing you need is a job, you don't go into this industry. Like if you need to be employed in 6 months, I know exactly what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to go take a programming boot camp and you will have a job in 6 months.
Yeah.
Everybody I know who has done that has got the job in 6 months.
Yeah, you're right. I'm just thinking I heard Bryan Cranston in an interview say one day, if I wasn't a successful TV movie star, I'd be living with 5 other guys and make plays at night and make nothing. Like you kind of have to go with that purpose of really loving it.
I love that. That's great. Because basically what he's saying is I'd be doing this anyways. I'm just successful or not successful yet.
That's right.
That's great. So the key thing is you just have to love it. This has to be because, there is jobs that you're guaranteed employment.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm surrounded. I'm here in Orange County up in Laguna Beach. I'm surrounded by real estate agents and finance geeks, and, they all have some good, strong job security.
Yeah.
But I couldn't do that job. I'd go nuts.
The thing is, I had 1 year experience in the States in California. So it's a bit different than in Montreal. Like in Montreal, I have to say it's a booming industry. And, there's people who have been working for Ubisoft for 20 years.
Yeah, totally.
And it's very stable and there's a lot of work. And I saw when I went to California that it's not the case everywhere. Like sometimes and that's because of government subsidies and stuff like this. But when I was in California, the game was, we had 3 months to ship a game. And if it didn't work, it didn't work. It imploded. And I saw people who worked in the industry for 10 years and never shipped a game. Like that's really hard.
That's pretty intense. Yeah. That's in Montreal. Or do you mean
in California?
Oh, right. Because they're going from one project to another project and it's all failing.
That's right.
Yeah. That's tough.
And there was a guy who worked on Indiana Jones and then a couple of months before Uncharted came out and just, it threw everything off balance. It's really tough. So I'm not the best to tell you about how the industry should go because we're very blessed in Montreal.
Well,
and you have to tell your students that maybe Montreal is a place to go if there's a company who wants you.
That sounds great. I mean, the best steak I've ever had is at the Keg right there in Montreal.
That's funny.
I used to stay at the hotel right above there when I trained at Ubisoft.
Tell me next time you're coming. We'll have a beer.
Sounds good. I love that place. Oh my God. I can remember that taste now. All right. So along those lines, let's say in Montreal, what made you kind of go off on your own? Because you're not Keos Masons is large, big company, but I don't know if it has the stability of Ubisoft or something like that. What makes you, choose to work in, an outsourcing or a freelance What would you guys call Keos? Because it's not an
It's
outsourcing, but it's called that by some companies.
yeah, it's an outsourcing company
Okay, good.
that I think of. Oof. Well, I can tell you like that in like I'm in my late 30s and I made some two really unsafe, tough choices. Recently was to leave everything for California to go
Yeah.
work in a new company.
Yeah.
And the second one was to work with Chaos. So I was at Ubisoft. We were shipping Far Cry 5. Everything was great.
Yeah.
And then I had that lunch that completely changed my life where Marco and Cedric invited me to lunch. I should have worried something was going to happen. And then they told me like, we want you to join us. And shit, it's like if like, John and Ringo asked you to be in his new band, like you can't say no to that. Like you have to jump in. Like it's a way to improve yourself. I've been loving those guys' work for years.
That's awesome.
For the young people, that was a reference to the Beatles.
For the young, who's that? Yes. My kids know the Beatles, but it's in the kids programming now.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and Marco and Cedric have been around for a long time. It always amazes me how much of their own work they produce and they run this crazy productive company.
I've met them at IDOS. Their speed is even after working 2 years with them is still mind-boggling. I still don't get it. I still don't know. I don't know. I worked next to Marco and I didn't believe it. He's a golden child. He's gonna be happy to hear that.
Yeah, you will. I'll address all my emails to him as dear golden child. That's awesome. All right, Guillaume, thank you so much for taking the time and for being here.
Oh man, I prepared so many things that we didn't get to.
Oh,
amazing. We went completely a different route. I love it.
That's my habit.
Can I have like 5 minutes for the show to say the very smart things I wrote down?
Yes. Yes, please. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we're all just waiting to hear the very smart things.
Okay.
There you go.
Well, it's just I'm trying to give back. So there's references that are really good that people can look into if they want to improve. Yes. I think anything Andrew Loomis was amazing. Great draftsman. Anatomy rules. Like he made a lot of books. And like we were talking before about learning about our peers or people who were before us. So Andrew Loomis, great. There's a great book called Drawing People by Barbara Bradley.
Oh, and that one I don't know.
In there, she goes through like a science of folds, or not science, but through like families of folds. So on top of my head, there's a zigzag fold, drop fold, diaper fold. So when it's kind of hard to look at a concept or a reference and like trying to, I don't know, picture which fold you should do. With those, you go like zigzag is on the tubular, cylindrical aspect where it usually bends a lot. So the back of your jeans. So zigzag, back of the jeans. Okay, you got that. Half lock is where a tubular changes direction. So the elbows, everything like that. It's great. The Dota 2 art direction doc is also great.
The which one, sir?
I don't know if Dota 2 shared an art direction document with people who made skin. And there's great information there about colors and form. Yeah, that's right.
Is it the cosmetic items or?
I'm not sure. A character art guide. You don't know about this, Ryan?
This one I don't know.
Yeah. Oh Jesus, you're gonna have fun.
There we go.
Just scroll fast. How beautiful it is. Yeah. Oh yes, that's all. Just gold. Oh
my God, lots too. Yeah. That's beautiful though. This is great to see the color combinations. Keep people focused on it.
Yeah.
That's great.
And then the golden child again, Marco Plouffe made a WASP tutorial, WASP. His big robot. He shows like through his sculpting. That's right.
Oh yeah, this one I remember this.
All his secrets. maybe if you were going to ask me about advice to give your students, it's about like purpose,
Absolutely.
question yourself. And like my question with you is, all the advent of scans and marvelous, like everything's becoming automated, but you still have to understand how it works. Like you can't just press a button. The computer will never do the work for you. The same way with like substance, it's not because you can make something completely dirty that everything should always be dirty. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And it's one of the big issues that we deal with, is just making sure that the damage or the surface is usage appropriate,
Yeah. Okay. Those advice are a bit out there too. And you probably haven't heard, well, maybe you did, but you should cultivate other interests of yours other than 3D and video games. And this is what actually is going to give you a personal flavor. And that's how you're going to own your own work. If it's sports or architecture, you need to be curious. And somehow this love of yours, you will introduce in your own work. Like me, I've discovered dancing, and that gave me a sense of self, of balance and weight shift. And also it gave me it made me more confident into approaching people. So yeah, that's my story.
Yeah, that's a great point. A couple of people have echoed that, including like taking piano, learning something new, and deep diving, just to take your brain out of, because it can be kind of tunnel vision, because we have so much we have to learn and so much we have to do.
Yeah. There's painting over your work, which I started to do recently. You don't need to be a great 2D artist, but taking a screenshot of your ZBrush model, putting it next to your concept, and then just pushing the forms. That's a great way to like find new ideas, and to also 3D is very precious because everything is has to be nice in every angle. And about that cheekbone, like people like to see a very sharp cheekbones on the 3/4 view, but that's hard to get in every aspect. So when you look at it and you draw on top of it and you push your anatomy and you break everything a bit, you just make it more emotional and vibrant. And then you try to adapt this to your model.
All right, Guillaume, thank you so much. And absolutely wonderful meeting you and talking to you.
You're
Say hello to Marco.
I will.
All right. Take care.
I'll kiss the ring. Thank you. Bye.
Kiss the ring. Please do. Please do. All right. Thanks, guys, for joining. See you all.
All right. So I want to thank you so much for being here, for taking the time, and for listening to this podcast. And I want to ask a couple of things from you. Number one, make sure you leave a comment or you rate this on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever it is that you're getting this. That's going to make a big difference in helping us get the word out and get people to know who we are. All right. The other thing is I want to make sure you know where to find us. So you can head over to www.gameartinstitute.com, where you can learn about our flagship program, which is the Game Artist Bootcamp. This is designed for those who are really looking to move the needle on their career and really lock in that job. You may have gone to school and learned a bunch, maybe haven't learned a bunch. But at the Game Art Institute, the primary focus we have is the very specific industry skills, the triggers that you really need to hit in that job interview. What are the specific things that they're looking for? That's what we're going to be training you on. We're taking applications right now for environment artists and for character artists. So make sure you head over to www.gameartinstitute.com and apply today. That way we can have that conversation, make sure this is a fit for you, make sure that you're a fit for it, and if everything is perfect, then we will sign you up for that right away and get you into your training and start moving the needle on your career. All right? Thank you so much again for being here. Take care. Have an amazing day.